This is Talking Foreign Policy, a critical look at Canada's role abroad, and I'm Eve Engler. Today we're going to talk about one of the great imperial crimes and of the last couple centuries and Canada's role in it. April 17 marked 200 years since France forced Haiti to pay an astronomical sum for defeating slavery, white supremacy, and winning its independence. With the exception of a column in Le Devoir today, Saturday, the Canadian media seems to have ignored this anniversary and the comments of the French president on the matter. To discuss one of the great imperial crimes, Canada's response, we have Haitian Canadian activist and author Jafrikayti. First of all, thanks for coming on Talking Foreign Policy. And can you just start off with giving us kind of like an overview of what this ransom of independence was, how costly it was, how long it took to pay off, etc.
Yes, well, Eve, thanks again for having me in your program. You know, this ransom is something that is unique in world history in terms of a people that have fought against another army, and a few years later they show up and they demand a ransom, and the ransom was collected in the name of the French colonizers who have been dispossessed of their properties. That includes my great-great-grandparents who were enslaved subsequently by the Spanish, the British, and the French who occupied different parts of the island at different times. Of course, this happened in a context where Haiti, having taken its independence in that war, which lasted from 1791 to 1803, when the French general Rochambeau capitulated and, admitted that the Africans had won their freedom, and they got help from the British who were stationed in Jamaica in order to evacuate the last French from the island. Now, this happened in 1825, and so that's why we are in the 200th anniversary. When the French king of the time, Charles X, issued that statement saying that Haiti has to pay 150 million gold francs. To put this in context, just a few years earlier, in 1803, the Louisiana Purchase was concluded, where the United States bought Louisiana, which is not the current state of Louisiana. Louisiana at the time was one third of what is the United States today, essentially 77 times the size of Haiti. And they sold Louisiana for 80 million gold francs. And they asked 150 million gold francs for Haiti. So obviously, and the ordinance, I was just looking at, that statement from King Charles X. It wasn't just a question of asking for that money, which was of astronomical. It represented, several fold what Haiti had as gross national product for any of those years, right? But on top of that, the French demanded that in Article 1 of that ordinance, that Haiti now will have its ports open to all of the world, as if it's for them to decide that, but that every product that the French will buy from Haiti will be at half price, right? And so you imagine, this is a formerly enslaved population of Africans who basically are doing farming of coffee, cocoa, and all of that. And all of these products now France has decreed. And when France makes this statement, people need to understand it's because they had just signed a peace agreement with the British. And so they were at peace. There was no war in Europe anymore involving them. So they were able to do that. And there is evidence that they got the collaboration of the other European powers who also had an interest in crushing the Haitian state. I call this Haiti's breast milk, This is, a young nation that is trying to build itself. This is the period of the Industrial Revolution. Other countries were building their road infrastructure and all of these things. And of course, Haiti was basically collecting resources, cutting off their forest, closing schools. Essentially, the mulatto elite that was governing the country at the time succumb to this pressure to accept a deal where essentially they will re-enslave, without calling it slavery, the African masses who were in the heart of the country, basically confining them to subsistence farming and basically producing most of the money that was required, because it wasn't really the rich Haitians who were paying that ransom for from 1825 to 1947. When you do the math and you look at the details, it's really the peasantry that was confined to the countryside, working in agriculture without any proper equipment in order to produce all of that wealth for the French. And it was not only the French citizens who, formerly colonized Haiti who collected that money, the French state itself. And whether it was the monarchy or the republic, they all collected the ransom. In 1852, the Haitian emperor Faustin Soulouque said, "No, I don't want. I'm not paying this." At the time, he was president. And the French general who was there, Duquesne, his bluff was called and he returned to France. But he came back 2 years later in 1854 with, more boats, and gunboat diplomacy is something that was applied against Haiti throughout the 19th century. So we talk about this ransom and focusing on the French because it was the amount of money that was the most significant that was collected. But you had such ransom collected from Haiti from the Germans, from the Spanish, from the British, from the Americans, and from the French. So it was clearly a white supremacist project to crush this African nation, just like their foreign minister at the time wrote to James Madison saying that the existence of a Negro people in arms is a terrible threat for all white nations. And this has been the behavior throughout history. And in our most recent time, as you know, Canada has joined the white supremacist forces in crushing Haiti through the Ottawa Initiative on Haiti.
So you mentioned this took 122 years for Haiti to pay off. In the late 1800s, over 60%, I think sometimes as much as like 80% of government money was going to paying off this ransom. So we're talking about a huge cost to Haitian society, the Haitian government, with all kinds of obviously negative impacts on the country's ability to organize itself and to build itself, etc. Now, shifting into and this is this isn't when Haiti and Haitians and different governments have asked for the repayment. This is not for the enslavement. That's a whole other question of
Yes.
reparations, right? That's another maybe
Yeah.
bigger amount of money, but just this. The New York Times, I think, estimated it was somewhere between 40 billion and 100 billion that the ransom worked out to back in about 2 years ago. So there's been push from previous governments to pay this. Now, so this is a massive imperial crime, as you mentioned. Now, the Canadian media has sort of ignored this, from what I can tell. I haven't seen any, aside from this Le Devoir column, that's ignored this. So can you talk maybe a little about that, and then a little bit about some of what put this back onto the political radar, the Aristide government, some of the current push with the different Haitian officials, etc.
Yes. So, this issue was pretty much dormant until around 1999. I challenged President René Préval because, 1999, turn of the century, um, there was a meeting of the Francophonie that was happening in Moncton, Quebec. And I challenged President Preval, who preceded President Aristide, to claim and make a clear statement that Haiti will not enter the new millennium, uh, participating in the organization, the International Organization of Francophonie, which is a club of former French colonies and France, okay, countries that speak French and Quebec, without France, paying back that ransom. And President Preval, I don't know if he was wise or not, but he didn't listen to me. So the meeting happened at Moncton. And in fact, at that meeting, Jacques Chirac, the French president, came and he lectured the African leaders about democracy, basically the paternalistic, imperialist, white supremacist speech. And then by the time we reached 2003, President Aristide had won election victory again in December 2000, and he started his term and was already attacked by the United States, the CIA, organizing attacks from the Dominican Republic. They were arming terrorists led by Guy Philippe. And so President Aristide was in a situation where he needed funds. There were people like Danny Glover, heavyweights in Hollywood who were helping his government. But clearly, instead of organizations such as the IMF, the World Bank, helping the Haitian democracy to flourish, they were actually collecting money. They demanded that in order for Haiti to have access to some of the loans that were approved by the IDB, for instance, there was one that was 150 million. They said that President Aristide had to pay arrears in debt that were collected by the Duvaliers, the dictatorship that the Americans had established in Haiti. And the Duvaliers by that time had been in France, eating that money with the French elite for several decades. And so clearly President Aristide wanted to put to the world that, this is unfair. Like they're really just strangling a democracy that is trying to survive. And so he, on April 7th, 2003, he put this restitution demand on the table. However, whereas when I was, proposing this to President Preval a few years earlier in 1999, there were just a few of us trying to do the calculation of how much money this is, and we were estimating it at around $2 billion, etc. Well, President Aristide had an army of lawyers, historians, economists to analyze the thing, and they came to a very precise calculation that brought it to around $22 billion. Now, when he made that statement in Haiti in front of the diplomatic corps, you could have seen how stunned that they were and also angry. And the French immediately started, some of their diplomatic attacks. By that time, the meeting that I referred to earlier as the Ottawa Initiative on Haiti had just happened, right? Because it was January 31st, February 1st, 2003, that Denis Paradis, Canadian Minister for la Francophonie, invited foreign ministers to Gatineau and Ottawa to decide what to do about Haiti. And as Michel Vastel published in L'Actualité in March 2003, their decision was that Haiti had to be put under UN tutelage and the government of Aristide overthrown, which 13 months later, they did with US soldiers, French and Canadian soldiers who kidnapped the president and his wife and took him to the Central African Republic. And so what happened is that the French contacted their white cousins in Canada and the United States to say, get rid of Aristide. How do we know now that this is exactly what happened? Well, like you said, 3 years ago, the New York Times published a full study that is published in English, French, and Haitian Creole on the ransom. They talked about the whole story of how the ransom had been collected, but also how French ambassadors admit that it was because of the restitution demand that Aristide issued that the French contacted the Canadians and the Americans and conducted a coup in Haiti. As you know, Eve, you've been an active member of the Canada-Haiti Action Network. Even the word coup d'etat was banished from Canadian media, from North American media, when it was to refer to this kidnapping of the president in 2004. And so, of course, 20 years later, it doesn't matter for them. So the New York Times published all of that, and they actually estimated that the ransom collected by the French is closer to $115 billion, right? And so, of course, we've always argued that the longer that the French wait before they return that money, because this is not a case, like you rightly said, of reparations for racial slavery, which Haitians are also demanding, along with all other sane Africans around the world who understand exactly how the Mahafa, these attacks on West Africa, the kidnapping of our ancestors had put our people at a disadvantage around the world for several generations. But the restitution demand of Haiti is about armed robbery. It's like a finite amount of money that was collected by the French state, a legal entity, from a specific date to another specific date, the banks that collected the money. And of course, because the European royal families intermarry, when the New York Times did their study, they found many folks from the British royal family, okay, and other folks in other parts of Europe, like very rich families, even the Rothschilds in the United States, who also collected from that money, because there's the money that the Haitians were paying, but there's also loans that were negotiated in banks in France and Germany in order to pay that ransom, and American banks when the Americans invaded and occupied Haiti between 1915 and 1934. So clearly, it's a collective crime. And this is why, when they came together in 2004, it was a coalition of white-led nations that organized the core group. And basically, they took over the governance of Haiti, overthrew 7,000 elected officials, including President Aristide. And every major decision that is being made in Haiti today in 2025 goes through the most powerful people in Haiti, who are the US ambassador and ambassadors of Canada, France, other members of the core group.
So, just to recap that, to make that clear to everyone. So, Canada helped overthrow the government that put forward the restitution, that called for the restitution alongside the French and the Americans. As far as I know, Canada hasn't, no Canadian official has ever publicly criticized the ransom or called on France to repay Haiti. Simultaneously, they have repeatedly praised French values of democracy and liberty and stuff like that, which obviously, from a Haitian perspective, are a little bit hard to swallow. Uh, and so, but in this Le Devoir column, Canada's ambassador to the UN, Bob Ray, who's also the head of the UN ad hoc committee for Haiti, the special body, he made a comment that seems to sort of suggest he's backing Caribbean countries and others call for France to repay, and Emmanuel Macron, the French president, launched some sort of committee to discuss the history of French Haitian relations. So I guess my question is sort of, can you give us maybe a little bit about that, which seems to be a little bit just passing the buck and not committing to repayment, but committing to discuss something somewhere down the road. And I guess, the Canadian comment, the Canadian Bob Ray, the Canadian ambassador's comment on this, and why can't he just say straightforwardly that the Canadian government believes that this is something that Haitians are due. Yeah, just your assessment on that.
Yeah, because of course, Bob Ray, if he admits that, he would have to also admit that reparations are due for the Ottawa Initiative on Haiti, a crime in which Canada participated in order to bury the restitution demand in 2004, from 2004 to today. And they don't want to admit that the current mess that we have in Haiti, all of these killings are happening as a result of the 7,000 elected officials being removed from office and thugs that the United States prefer being established in the country. The situation in Haiti is very similar to what they did to the Congo in the 1960s, basically where they assassinated Patrice Lumumba and they put the dictator Mobutu Sese Seko in power. And often what you will hear from people, even from Haitians, the argument is that, well, France cannot return the money because you don't have a good government and that government is going to spoil and steal the money and whatever. So it's a secular argument, right? Ridiculous ideas, because of course they are the ones who put the puppets that are the corrupt ones in power after having removed the legitimate progressive government, right? So, but the other point I think is that is very important is that Bob Ray and the CARICOM, they're really pushing for a UN occupation, a return of a UN mission in Haiti to help them camouflage the crimes of the past 20 years and also ensure impunity for all of the folks, Haitian and foreign, who had participated in this crime against humanity. In addition, a tragic element of that story that I find disturbing, highly disturbing as a Canadian of Haitian origin, is that in 2005, the Prime Minister of the time named Michael Jean Governor General of Haiti, of Canada. And, you know, some people noticed what was happening right away, but very few, because most Canadians were not aware that Canada had just participated in a coup and invasion of Haiti in 2004. And so all of the discussion was about, well, Michael Jean is, you know, she had sovereignist, you know, leaning towards sovereignty in Quebec. And that was the game that was being played by Paul Martin. It was way more than that, right? Because Michael Jean, being married to a French author who is well known, she had French, Haitian, and Canadian nationality. She is a respected media personality from the Haitian community. And by naming her, the government of Canada managed to silence the voices that were rising in the Haitian community demanding justice for the crime that had just taken place, the Ottawa Initiative on Haiti. And I personally and others have written to Michael Jean when she became Governor General, admonishing her to not be a beautiful doll that just waves and represents the queen, and to do what she claimed that she was going to do. You know, like she chose as a coat of arms a rebel, you know, from the Maroons of Haiti, right? I mean, when you do something like that, you don't just become you know, pretty doll waving. Instead, what we saw is that the prime ministers, subsequent prime ministers, used her, and she allowed herself to be used to go to Africa and lecture the Africans so that they demand, they apologize for their role in the kidnapping of Africans by Europeans in Africa. Imagine how stupid that is. I mean, you're a black woman, okay? You represent the Queen of England, who still carries her throne with diamonds from South Africa, from India, from everywhere in the world that were clearly stolen. And you have the gall to go to your own people and perpetrate that lie as if, you know, the Europeans were traveling on the Atlantic Ocean, you know, in the love boat, and it's the Africans who called them, you know. No, that's not how it happened. okay, the slave ships were built in Europe expressively with the dimensions measured, how many men, how many women, how many children were going to be kidnapped, and how they were going to be stuck in those ships for 3 months and taking them to Africa. So it was raids against Africans. And so Michael Jean betrayed so many ways, let alone the idea that when we encourage her to take the opportunity to travel with her husband and talk, use the diplomatic opportunity that she had to convince the French government that it is time in the Francophonie to pay the restitution money back to Haiti. And at the time, those governments had surpluses. Okay, so they had the means to return the money. And Eve, I think it's also important here to quickly plug, and I don't want to go off track, but there's something very important that happened in our world at the end of August, beginning of September 2001, that unfortunately everybody has nearly forgotten, because everybody, when you think of September 2001, you think about the World Trade Center attacks and 9/11. However, just days before that, the whole world was focused on Durban, South Africa. And what was happening in Durban, South Africa, it was that major conference on reparations. And of course, all of the NGOs, activists, everybody was clamoring because all of the European nations and Canada had, surpluses. The United States, they could have paid reparations. They could have started the process. Instead, they all boycotted the Durban conference. One of the excuses they took, which is very sad when you reflect on it, so many years later, was that Israel claimed that there was an anti-Semitic flavor to this reparations movement, because of course people were also pointing to the fact that the Palestinian people were being oppressed by that racist state. Right? And so they took this opportunity to say, oh, this is anti-Semitic, and therefore they boycotted the whole reparations movement. And so today, when you see Macron claim that he's naming a commission, the fact is they had a commission in 2004, right? And that commission was praising people in the Haitian community from the Haitian elite who collaborated with the French against the Haitian government that demanded restitution. And if you follow the track, you will find that for many years after 2004, they were giving literary prizes to these fools. They were, giving them visas, all kinds of prizes, just like when the Europeans went to the shores of Africa, the few who betrayed our people, they gave them little things to put on their neck. All right. But this is a replay of that same cowardice that we have seen on the part of elites in our world who do not have the courage to ask the important question. So, for instance, the other day when the Minister Roberge, right, of immigration in Quebec, claimed that Quebec doesn't have the ability to welcome all the misery of the world because of a few Haitian refugees that were arriving by way of the United States. The reason why he can afford saying something like that without having an immediate reaction by the Canadian population is because they have completely destroyed our ability to express, how you say that, not sympathy, but empathy with these millions of people who are the wretched of the earth, who are coming from Haiti, from Latin America, from Africa, trying to follow the path of their own mineral resources who were stolen. Okay, that's all we're doing. When we come here, we're not coming here to skate on the Rideau Canal, like I say all the time. We come here because they have lighted a fire in our homeland. And so what the Haitian elite in Canada has failed to do is to express the truth of what's happening and the Canadian participation in the nightmare that these Black Haitians are facing. People will notice that you've never seen a white looking or light skinned Haitian as an immigrant at those borders. There's a reason for that. Because there's a socio-economic apartheid system that has been established on the island, and it survives for the same manner that racial slavery survived on the island for many times because of collusion between the racists in Haiti who control the economy, like Gilbert Bidjo, Deeb, and all of these other people who have been arming those terrorists that they're calling gangs, and corrupt elites in countries like Canada, the United States, and Europe. And so we need to actually find more people, such as those Haitians who are part of the Liberal Party of Canada, who always find a way to put water in their mouths, as we say in Haiti, so that they speak wobbly talk instead of telling the truth straightforward as it is.
Yeah, today actually I went there was a protest in front of the riding associate or the campaign office of the Liberal candidate in Papineau taking over from Justin Trudeau, and it's Marjorie Michel,
Mm-hmm.
who was the woman who, when people from Solidarité Québec Haïti occupied Trudeau's office 4 years ago, I believe, for his
Mm-hmm.
role in Haiti. She was the person sent by the Liberal Party to sort of be the Haitian face to argue that people leave the office without sending in the cops because they didn't want to arrest anyone. So the clearly the Liberal Party and some sectors of the elite sectors of the Haitian community are obviously working. They're sort of one and the same, or they work together on some of these policies. Um, Now, maybe just to conclude quickly, the what's the state of campaigning on the restitution? There's elements within the Haitian government calling for it. Is there, as far as you understand, any sort of international campaigning in France, demanding the repayment?
Yes, yes. There are activists who are organizing in France. So, for instance, the other day there was a demonstration in Paris. The primary focus was the instability and insecurity in Haiti, but there were activists who uh, joined the demonstration with the restitution demand, asking France to pay the debt. So this is happening a lot. It's growing. So, for instance, now if you go on Haitian Twitter, Facebook, everybody's talking about the fact that the commission that Macron is talking about is like everybody realized that this is crap, right? Because 10 years ago, in 1915, that was when Francois Hollande, only the second French president to have gone to Haiti, uh, before he went to Haiti, he was in Guadeloupe, which is one of those territories, these islands of the Caribbean that the French had stolen and still hold. Um, and he said while he was in Guadeloupe that, yes, what was done to Haiti was unfair. He said some call it a ransom. Okay. So, in fact, Macron has said nothing new 15 years later. But what Francois Hollande said 15 years ago is that when he goes to Haiti, he's going to pay that debt. And so everybody who was in his presence, including Michael Jean at the time, applauded him, African head of states, everybody. And then a few hours later, I don't think it was even days later, perhaps some of his aides, did the calculation, did the math, and told him, "Hey, this is, do you know what the amount is?" And so they backtracked and said, "No, no, they were talking about a moral debt." So imagine the ridiculous and the cowardice that is associated with this, because really, anyone who goes to Haiti can see that this nation needs its money. So now you're going to show up in front of this impoverished population and say that, well, you have a moral debt. Like, what are they going to do with your moral debt statement? Like, are they going to eat that? Are they going to build, an Eiffel Tower with your moral debt in Haiti so that tourists can go to Haiti instead of Paris? So obviously, what Macron is doing is the same old thing so that a few of the people in the Haitian community who know how to speak French and wine and cheese will be traveling back and forth and basically do exactly what, unfortunately, a segment of our population did, that is betray the masses with the colonizers. And that's why I call it, commission pile caca, because, it's colonizers and Conze. Conze is one of these folks who betrayed Haiti. So when we use Conze as traitor in Haiti, and that's the kind of commission that they've established. And no, that's not the way. However, there are people in the Haitian community who are establishing ties with the global reparations movement. Okay, folks who are quite serious in the United States, in England, in other parts of Europe, in the Caribbean, and also with the indigenous people of the Americas. Because we always remind folks that this is not a crime that was only committed against Africans. It was committed against Africans and against the native people of the Americas. And so I participated in a couple of these reparations meetings in Caracas, Venezuela. And if President Maduro gets the support that he should get from others in Latin America and move this in a coalition of indigenous people of the Americas and of Africa, I think there is a high chance that these folks will have to stop their ridiculous approach of, making fun of their victims. Like I said, if they had paid those reparations back in 2001, the world would have been in a much better place today for both the heirs of Napoleon Bonaparte and Elizabeth and Leopold, as well as those who survived their wickedness. Unfortunately, right now, what we're seeing is people like Bob Ray sugarcoating those crimes, and their hope is that they're going to be able to continue to fleece the Africans of their gold, of their coltan, of their diamond, just like they will fleece the Haitians of the gold that exists on the island today. And really, it's a stubborn and stupid approach because there is just no way what we are living today is sustainable.
From a Canadian perspective, it seems like the absolute minimum is to get a Canadian government to say that France should repay the ransom. That's a pretty low bar. So there's some campaigning to be done on that.
Absolutely.
Thanks a lot for coming on, talking foreign policy. People can check out your work at jafrikayti.com. Thanks a lot, Jean.
If I would be amiss if I didn't thank you and applaud you for your heckling of Macron when he was in Montreal, reminding him of the necessity to pay that. And I think direct action from individuals like you've done goes a long way because indeed there's quite a lot of education that needs to be done still. And I believe that there are many allies out there that are simply not aware of the reality. And so, yes, when people see Haitians showing up at the border of the US-Canadian border, um, it's not a question of, we're going to make Canada rich because we're all going to become astronauts. No, we are immigrants just like immigrants of every other place, okay? And there's not a question of good immigrants, bad immigrants, but it's plain that when Ukrainians were coming to Canada, all of these questions weren't being asked. Nobody talked about an invasion. Nobody spoke about all of this fear. So clearly, the fear is about Black and brown refugees arriving to Canada. We need to face the white supremacist racism that is part of our foreign policy. And that's why people need to speak the truth and stop this ridiculous approach of sugarcoating everything, hoping that by doing so, we're going to solve anything. Thanks, brother.
Thank you.